Hey, howdy do. I have clawed my way back in. I'm here. Whoo boy, it's been a long time. It's been hard to make it back. I apologize for my rather sketchy state. I haven't really figured out how to build myself a body in the blank here yet. So let's get on to more important tasks, shall we? I failed this one. I bungled it all up, guys. I shot for the stars, I made it to the moon, then I plummeted back to Earth and sank to the bottom of the ocean. For the second of 4 projects in my environments class, we were looking at concept art, particularly for Rapunzel and Incredibles, which do pretty well at this sort of thing. For this project, we were making concept art for a secret lair and trying to create an interior and exterior that were somehow intrinsically linked through design elements, despite being hidden. Like Syndrome's forest, hidden in the jungle volcano, versus his interior, which ties those elements together with shape language and rocks and color palette and the lava and all that jazz. So you know it's the same place. It's not that I didn't spend enough time on it. 9 hours. 9 hours of work. My usual is 6 for most projects, but I just couldn't pull it off this time. I started off, as so oft I do, with a bunch of thumbnails to try and get a feel for what I wanted. My concept was my first D&D character I ever played with my family group, Lucius Leroy. He's a void mage of sorts, very dear to my heart, and focused on weaving the nothing into something, using also my very first ever homebrew class, so I was going to make him floating in a void room, with furniture scattered around in weird positions. But I was turned away from that for a more compositionally complex, grounded setting that combined many of my previous ideas from the thumbnail phase. The exterior would instead be his shopfront, Lucius's sortilege, and from the bay window there would be a symbol that casts a shadow of a door on the opposite wall, which would go into a cozy interior space when opened. I wanted to pan down from the rafters in the corner and look down at this wide shot of the room. It was a tough perspective to get, and I went through a lot of versions to get where I did. Then I did this value study on it, and then a color study. Then I thought, actually, this sucks. The perspective is all wrong, so obtusely wrong. And in retrospect, I really should have just finished it there, because an ugly finished render is prioritized well over a really well done sketch. But no. So I spent the next few hours trying to get the perspective right so that I could draw everything out on the same plane. Now mind you, I've never actually done perspective right before, never studied, never learned, and honestly, I didn't really do that here either. I looked for references and messed with it over and over and over until I figured it out for myself. I'm boorishly independent that way, and my first thought is never, I should go find someone to teach me. I should ask my teacher. I should go over to Skillshare or Udemy and look up a perspective class or watch a YouTube on it. Nope, I just go face first until my dreams are ground into the asphalt in a puddle slipping through my fingers, and when all hope is lost, I might start studying after I've given up. And maybe if that studying inspires me, I'll come back to my plans, scrape them up off the tar, and try again. I'm a proud practicer of Drawfee's classic saying, delete your art, which I couldn't find a single clip of on the internet. Not that asking the teacher would have helped anyway, of course. Later on when we turned these in, I basically just handed in the sketch. Just a colored sketch. And everyone said, including the teacher, that the perspective was perfectly fine. They didn't notice anything weird about the lines. In fact, if there was anything, it was just stylistic, and the sketchiness of it, well, that's just my rendering style. Now, I want you to take a good look at what I do throughout this video and tell me that the perspective is perfectly fine in this initial sketch, that the rendering isn't a mess, and that I actually succeeded. I don't believe them. I really don't. I know everyone is their worst enemy, but being realistic, I failed. I think if I'm being totally honest, the students don't know how to critique and the teachers aren't much better, and the setting just isn't set up for pushing limits at all. Nothing against the teacher. I like him, actually. He's one of my favorite that I've had, and at least he pops in every once in a while to give me some advice. But the whole system is soft. Everyone gets good feedback. It's all they get. It's a feedback loop of false positivity. I don't get any comments on my work in the grades. In our critique, I get softballed, and when I'm working alone. If I ask for help, it's usually ambiguous or affirmative to what I was already thinking. It's not an environment that challenges me, tests me, or helps me. I want critique. I want it to brutal effect. I want them to tell me why I failed, so I can do it better. Make me delete my art. There's so many better artists than me in just that one class that could all rip my work apart piece by piece, but they don't. Comparison isn't the thief of joy for me. It's objective failure by the metric of comparison. Nuance, see? And there's a missing piece of that phrase, I think, because comparison does steal my joy, but I'm greater than the lows that I sink to time and time again. I'm fragile, but resilient. That comparison, it also drives me to be better. They can rip my work apart piece by piece, but that would just show me how to rebuild it stronger. One professor I had told me about how he had a teacher growing up, a ceramics teacher that would have him spend weeks making hundreds of pots, and the midterm was to smash them all and start over for the final. Nothing was precious, feelings weren't important, it was the perfection of the craft, the dedication of work ethic. No one got a participation trophy, you won or you lost, and if you lost, you fought harder to win with real advice and a guiding hand at your back. I yearn for that push, but they don't push us. It's also crushingly cushy and lame. I feel like I'm floating in a directionless void with no guidance, no pressure to shove me along the right path, no fire to run through, no broken pots. I'm in a security bubble. And the only thing keeping me up at night isn't the work, it's the workload, which I did to myself. It wasn't even the professors. I took on 5 classes this term just to push myself, because they won't, and I desperately wanted to learn faster. My guides don't direct me, the environment doesn't challenge me, or rather, it does in some ways, little nudges, but only because I take it so seriously. I don't get shattered pots. I don't have the trial by fire that I want. I get affirmations with hints of advice. Just enough to lead me a way, but I have to pick the heading myself. I have to light the fire, shred my work, break my pots, build my own obstacle course, at which point, why am I even there? Which is the whole reason I went with drawings for this project at all. Normally, I would do a vector piece. It's what I know, it's what I'm good at. Believe me, I'm pretty good at Illustrator. It's what the teacher wanted me to do. He wanted me to take that easy way because, in his words, it was where my strengths lie. But that's not the point for me. Yeah, I'm good at vector art, but vector isn't where I see my future. I'm already good at vector. Why would I be going to school for more vector? Vector isn't my cage. I won't be strung up to that method and left to die when vector alone isn't good enough, and Illustrator gets rotated off the market by some Adobe scandal. So all to say through that rambly story, I need to push myself brutally to test my capacity. 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still 1 step forward. I am my own worst enemy, but that's for good reason. I need to be. So I pushed it hard this time. I thought, well, I've never done an interior before, and I've never done perspective before, and I have 2 full pages to do, and I've at least drawn 2 pages before, so I have that much under my belt. I have 3 weeks to do it. How hard can it be, right? I've done more with less. Well, I made the templates in Illustrator like you've been seeing me do this whole time lapse, and I worked at it so hard to get the shapes just right. And every time I thought I did, I realized that they were wrong, and I went back and redid them. And over and over and over again that process went, and in the end, it took so long I couldn't do it in the time frame. I got burned out before the furnishings were even done being drawn. It was a jank process made all the more a mess by my learning fatigue from trying too many new things all at once. And I expectedly fell short. So when I turned in the polished sketch and all I got was, "Looks fine to me," well, that was disheartening, 'cause look at it. Come on guys, honestly, my professor is a professional illustrator, and so are so many of the students, and nobody has anything to say about it? You can't just critique it on what it is, as if what it is what it's supposed to be. I think it needs to be measured up to what it's supposed to be, to show me how far I have left to go. So I come to the conclusion that, well, like I said, bungled it up. This project was stressful and dissatisfying, and though I learned much, I have little to show for it. I was going to put my heart and soul into finishing the piece for the video. I really was, and I realized that's the takeaway. I learned, and having something to show for it isn't the point. Destroying the piece was the point. It was the learning just as much as making it. If I didn't concede this work as a failure, I was never going to move on and grow. If nothing else comes to light from my rambles, I realized that this drawing is just like the pottery from my teacher's store. There's no time to fawn over every perfect detail and make it precious and personal. The doing is the learning. The piece is pointless once it's done. It's just a snapshot of yourself where you were. If you cling to it, you're stuck to that frame, and you won't move forward. So even if I have to build the obstacle course myself and set myself through the ring of fire, it's time to smash the pot and try again. Hey, so I hope you've enjoyed my little story time. It wasn't the best I've ever written as far as scripts go, but I hope there were some little wisdom biscuits to be gleaned from it at least. I'm trying to take what has been a very awful and dissatisfying 6 months and put a positive spin on it for my public face. I'll be around guaranteed for at least until January when classes kick off again, and I've got lots of finished and much more exciting pieces to show for that duration. Contrary to this story, I did come up with a lot of good stuff this term, just not this time. Sorry if it was a downer to kick off my absence with something like this, but failure's part of the process. So I hope you've all enjoyed. Have a great week, and until next time, farewell.